Thank you, everyone. This meeting is being held on the traditional unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coast Salish people. And we thank them for that. The meeting is being live streamed and the audio and visual recording will also be available to the public for viewing after the meeting. Footage of the meeting may be viewed inside and outside of Canada. As we state before all our meetings, the board has a strong commitment to ethical conduct. This includes the responsibility of the committee members to conduct themselves with appropriate decorum and professionalism. We have a meeting that is 2 hours long because there is a budget meeting at 7 o'clock. I know everyone's looking at the agenda items and it is pretty lengthy. We will try to proceed. And because of that, we will be moving the agenda items for approval, items 4.1, 4.2, to commence immediately after the delegations make their presentations. Okay, and then we'll get into the information items after that. There's much on the agenda, and just to remind the trustees, your opportunity is at the board with regards to discussions. Clarifying questions and is appropriate for tonight, but we would like to hear from stakeholder groups with regards to long-range facility plan and all the other items. So trustees, if you can keep your comments and till the budget meeting, but clarifying questions will be appreciated as well. Okay. Because we have, when it has to do with the long-range facilities plan, we have the stakeholder groups here this evening as members, but we also ask their presidents of their organization. So we have 2 members from each organization. That's why it's an expanded committee members tonight. So because of that, if we can do a quick go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Alan Wong, trustee and chair of facilities and planning.
Jim Messina, director of facilities.
Jennifer Reddy, trustee.
Estrelita Gonzalez, trustee. Barb Parrott, trustee.
Jill Barclay, Vancouver elementary teachers.
Fiona Chang, Vancouver District Student Council representative.
Kate Hall, co-president of Vancouver District Student Council.
Debbie Mohabir, QB Local 15.
Sean Callie, DPAC.
Ann Montgomery, DPAC.
Angie Haveman, VASA.
Annette V. Chilton, VASA.
Darren Mitzel, VETFA. Douglas Rock, VETFA.
Harjeet Kangura with the operating engineers.
Lisa Landry, assistant secretary treasurer.
Carmen Cho, trustee.
Janet Fraser, trustee.
Oliver Hansen, trustee.
David Green, secretary treasurer.
And staff starting with, and it's hard for me to see, David Nelson.
David Nelson, deputy superintendent.
John Dawson, director of educational planning.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Because of the lengthy agenda item, I won't be asking for any item for requests, as I don't think we'll get to that portion. So we'll go straight into the delegations. First delegation is, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Kelsilum. Is Kelsilum available? That's all right. I'll move it to, as we go through the presentations by the delegations, as usual, it is a 10-minute timed, and at the 9-minute point, we will give a warning. I'm going to be very strict about it because of our time constraints here. Is that okay? We'll move straight to the second delegation. Liz Baldry, PAC Chair of Ideal Mini. Liz. Before you begin, I just want to know, is someone in particular keeping record of the time, or I can do it right here? Carrie is? Okay, thank you, Carrie. Liz.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name's Liz Baldry. I'm the PAC Chair at Ideal, and I'm here today with two of our students, Paisley and Paul. I'm going to be giving an outline and explanation about our programme, and then we'll hand over to Paisley and Paul for them to speak, because it's their school and their programme that is threatened, and they asked to come and present today on behalf of themselves and their school colleagues. So who are we? We are Ideal Mini School. We're a district enriched academic programme for programmes grades 8 to 12, and that's under the stewardship of Sir Winston Churchill Secondary School. It's a safe environment and a standalone facility for creative, academically motivated students who feel that they should flourish in a smaller learning environment. It fosters social responsibility and awareness, community involvement, leadership, and academic excellence. Its small learning environment provides students with the opportunity to develop their leadership. Is that loud enough, by the way? Yeah? Okay. So why are we here? Ideal Mini has existed in its standalone building for more than 30 years. As outlined in the draft LRFP document, the possible relocation of Ideal Mini from its current standalone facility to a larger school with surplus capacity is on there. And we're here tonight to strongly request that Ideal Mini remains at its current standalone facility, because the standalone structure is the foundation to Ideal's success. Ideal would lose its essence if it were to exist within a smaller, or within a larger school body rather. What's unique about our programme? We have, because we're basically all in one small programme, we have one class per grade. So there's a lot of cross-grade interactions and collaborations. We have an annual 3-day camp for all the students, weekly student-led meetings, tutoring club, and group work, which is part of Ideal's learning philosophy, and it's integral to what they do. Cross collaborations are possible because of camp, the fact that all these kids work together and they see each other in the classrooms and in the hallways every day. Barriers to collaboration are very low due to the familiarity between the students because of the small size, and also the fact that the teachers know everybody very well. Senior students mentor the younger students, and it creates an environment where teachers and senior students can install and strengthen the core Ideal values, which are learning, respect, honesty, and justice in our younger students. And we believe that these factors set us apart from other mini schools and definitely regular high schools. We are quite a unique programme. How Ideal students achieve success? As I've mentioned a couple of times, it's a small standalone facility which allows students and teachers to establish a strong working relationship. The teachers know their students really well, which obviously is beneficial sometimes, and maybe students might not think it's beneficial at other times, but it's good. And when they know their students so well, they're able to suggest opportunities and challenges. And so one of the things that has done this year is, for the first time, we had children who partook in the National Ethics Bowl and also Destination Imagination. And we've had 2 teams that went through or are going through to the global finals, which take place in Kansas in Missouri. Oh, is it? And so when are they going? 2 weeks? Yeah. In 2 weeks. And then we also had a team who went through to the national finals at the Ethics Bowl, youngest team to qualify. So rightly, they should be very proud of themselves, as we are of them. Why should Ideal not close or relocate? Ideal is a humble building, but it's seismically safe. It's operating at near capacity. The teachers and students have built a school community that is safe, welcoming, and inclusive, and accepting. Students who are shy or reserved have found strength and security in this community and accordingly have actively engaged in leadership opportunities. This community cannot truly be replicated in a larger school because Ideal would need to integrate its community into a community of a larger school, and as we've said, a smaller building. It would lose its essence. The programme is unique. There is not another programme like it in the whole of Vancouver. We draw students from across the entire VSB district, and it really is something quite special. But it's not about us, it's about the students. So I'm passing over to Paisley and Paul so they can explain to you why they think we need to stay as we are.
Hi, my name's Paisley and I'm in grade 11.
And my name is Paul and I'm in grade 9. We are from Ideal Mini School and today I want to share with you why we think Ideal's independent building is very important to the program.
So the small setting has allowed me to have a better relationship with the teachers and other students, and it's especially made cross-grade friendships super easy to make and maintain. Ideal encourages these cross-grade friendships by creating bonding opportunities at our yearly camp, leadership activities, and our weekly student-led school meetings, which the whole school participates in. Even our graduates still feel a strong connection to the school.
A smaller building has allowed like-minded people who believe in the Ideal philosophy of social responsibility and trust to stay together while still having their own individual growth. Because of this smaller environment and our like-mindedness students and teachers, we trust each other. We trust each other so much that on our lockers we don't have locks. This trust is quite difficult to come by in a community or any school.
Having the same teachers from grade 8 to 12 mixed with our tight-knit environment has allowed me to have a more personalized and valuable education experience. I'm not quite finished my high school career yet, but I and so many other students at Ideal would not want to trade our current building for anything else. Our teachers have also worked so immensely hard to create and maintain the feeling of community we currently have. They're also super dedicated to their jobs and to the school, and it would be heartbreaking to have to take their work away from them.
To end off, Ideal is a seismically safe school operating at near capacity. It would make no sense to relocate students from a safe school to an unsafe school, and after all, the whole idea of relocation and closure is to get more kids into safer schools. Thank you.
That's it. Done.
Very good. Thank you very much, Liz, Paisley, and Paul. Just opening it up for any questions, clarifying questions from the committee members. Thank you very much, and thank you for presenting at the two LRFP meetings. There were many Ideal Mini students there. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next is Sean Calley, Chair of Vancouver DPAC. And Sean has submitted the presentation as well, right?
Thank you, Chair. The slide presentation is our presentation. So everything that we're going to say is in there. I have trustees which take it away for information. So thank you for allowing me to present on behalf of Vancouver DPAC. For those who don't know me, my name is Sean Calley. I have a daughter in grade 7 at Charles Dickens Elementary. I'm also a graduate of this district, Eric Hamber class of 1992. So we have a very simple message to deliver to the board. Do what's right to provide safe, quality education for our children. For too long, we've been constrained by the capacity models that do not reflect the actual use of space in schools. Rooms that are used for educational and community purposes have been considered empty. The real needs of children are not factored in, and we can constantly see undertakings like LRFP as battles because they're focused on closures rather than on providing better education. On April 29th of this year, we sent an open letter to the board expressing our belief that the central narrative of the LRFP, the quote patchwork of schools narrative, was pretty much dead because the draft LRFP does not reflect the spirit of the letter from Minister Fleming and the updated LRFP guidelines. As well, the specific clauses in the capital plan instructions supporting this narrative have been removed. This presentation is an opportunity to draw your attention back to our letter, as well as to update our positions on the recommendations made in the LRFP and on the new motions brought forward by the board. Since the LRFP timeline was first provided to DPAC in late January, we've highlighted both in direct communication to the district and through social media the need for explicit direction from the board, better consultation, though we did take a step in the right direction on this, and alternatives to the restrictive constraints imposed by the Ministry of Education. We believe that now is the time for the board to adopt a leadership mindset and make the decision to look forward rather than backwards. We want the board to take the positives in the LRFP, because there are some, and move forward with them, but to leave the overall model behind and to start fresh once more information is on the table. So I'm going to go through essentially a checklist summary of where DPAC falls on the recommendations that are in the LRFP, as well as the 6 motions that were brought forward by the board. And I'm going to focus just on the ones mostly that we're not in favor of. The rest of them you can just assume we are. I'll just say so. So number 1, we are in favor. This is to develop an AP around consultations. Number 2, we're also strongly in favor of, and I'll come back to this when we talk about recommendation number 13. This is the recommendation for preferred school size. Number 3, which is the consolidation of alternative programs, we are not in favor of. As we heard from the last delegation, this would cause undue stress and ruin the character of those programs. For number 4, this is about continuing the work started in the French program review. We have some concerns about this one, even though I know it's been approved by the board already. We would like to see the recommendations in the French program review set in the context of all district priorities, presented transparently as such to school communities. And obviously I'm referring to the recent Strathcona and Hudson consultations where this was not the case. We also do need to see, going back to recommendation 1, a better consultation process put in place. Number 5, which is undertaking enrollment data validation, we're in favor. Number 7, that the district continues to work with the city on Cole Harbour, we're in favor. Number 8, which is to continue the work on capital asset management. We're actually not in favor on this one, and right now we just don't believe there's enough information to support this recommendation. Effective is a normative term, and we therefore have to be defined by the guiding principles of the LRFP. We also believe that schools are more than just physical assets, and hence that a standard capital asset management plan might be insufficient, and hence the need for more information. For number 9, which is a budget allocation to hire real estate consultants, we're also not in favor. This one suggests that the business plan's already in place, and we haven't seen enough information to support that. So this recommendation seems premature. For number 10, we're in favor of making the capital plan submission. For number 11, which is to continue enrollment management, we're in favor, and especially on the part about reporting back to the Facilities Planning Committee, to this committee. For number 13, we are very strongly in favor of looking at right sizing through the SMP, and this should be tied directly to recommendation number 2, which is preferred school size. Ideally, this should be used to inform the capital plan submission, as these 2 factors would really heavily weigh in, especially on the seismic side. For number 14, which is about Guy Carleton Elementary, we agree with the recommendation to make a decision. For number 15, and I'll say 16 and 17, which is to take section 10, the feasibility analysis, we're very strongly opposed to this, mostly because we believe that the framework that the feasibility studies are set up in needs to be jettisoned and replaced with something different. Number 18, apologies, which is to investigate the implications of the new guidelines. We're very strongly in favor, and we actually believe this is necessary preliminary work before completing the LRFP. So to talk about the 6 motions that have been brought forward by the board. First one is to get clarification from the minister on the implications for our future capital requests. We're very much in favor of this motion. We've asked the minister this question, but did not receive a direct response. Instead, we were told the district should take the opportunity to submit as many seismic projects as possible, and in particular projects for East Side schools. For the next motion, which is to engage the ministry and renegotiate the MOU, we're also very much in favor. For the next one, which is to have a trustee serve as a non-voting member of the project steering committee, we actually don't have a definitive position on this motion. There's some belief that there needs to be a lot more put into what having a trustee serving on this committee would mean, how that would be defined in board policy, and how a mitigation of bias of a single trustee would be accounted for. For the next one, which is to maximize opportunities for childcare space, we're generally in favor, but we need to look at the case, for example, of Eric Hamber, where we can't have childcare space replacing educational space. So that would be the caveat we'd want to impose on this one. For number 5, sorry, E, which is to continue to collaborate with the City of Vancouver, the Endowment Lands, and First Nations. We're generally in support of this motion, but there are some concerns that collaborations to date have not been effective, and hence a more detailed statement of what such collaborations and how such collaborations would be used to influence and support projects under the purview of each party would take place. And the final one, which is that the board directs staff to develop a way to assess capital utilization of the Vancouver School Board facilities to inform a 2020 LRFP. We're in favor of this motion, but I think we're looking at saying that we're happy for this LRFP to become the 2020 LRFP. That we definitely want to see a new model in place for determining capacity utilization, defining it, but it's for this LRFP, not for the next one. And so if it takes more time to get that right, please take it rather than putting resources into unwinding a hybrid plan. So just to conclude, so we believe there's a very real opportunity for school districts to challenge the status quo, to find their own standards and metrics for how to best use their facilities to deliver quality education to our children. This opportunity is too important to squander by remaining encumbered in the now outdated ministry policies. Our advice to the board is this: in the short term, approve any of the recommendations and or motions that you feel moves the district in the right direction or puts more information on the table without committing to the general framework of the LRFP. Sorry, I'm a few slides behind. In the medium term, direct the work outlined in recommendation 18 to be completed. Articulate as a board and in consultation with district staff, stakeholder groups, parents, and the general public your vision for education in Vancouver. Complete the student success model, complete the catchment review, and then start the LRFP process over again using these as the guiding principles. We welcome any questions from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. The last point there with regards to this, start the LRFP process again. It is a, as you're aware, it's every year there's a new review or revision of the LRFP. So there has been a number of things that have been moved ahead already, as you're aware. I think with regards to restart, there's going to be a discussion tonight with regards to some of the remaining and the additional recommendations. So with that, your thoughts that we should still proceed with those or just stop altogether?
I think the recommendation, some of the recommendations are worthwhile continuing with, and some of the motions definitely have value. To your point, and I think we've said this at this table before, we don't see the connection between the current LRFP draft and the 2016 one. So to say that they're iterations of each other, I don't think rings true for us. And again, that to me says that the LRFP is a document to be determined and approved by the board at any given time. It doesn't have to be an iteration, even though that would be nice at some point. So I believe that at this point, because we don't see that continuity, starting from scratch, I don't think is going to be that much of a hardship, and I think would actually be welcomed and supported by parents and the public.
Thank you. And one more point is sort of apologies on my part. With regards to the additional recommendations from the trustees, there were 2 more recommendations that didn't make it into the Friday package, and so, but it is in the updated package. So there are 2 additional recommendations in there. So just wanted to make you aware of that, and we'll get to that in terms of a slide later on. So apologies for not getting that out on the Friday package.
We'll be happy to follow up by email as well on that.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. David Nelson, Deputy Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for this information of trustees, I just want to clarify that the proposal around consolidating alternate programs is for alternate programs. So specifically, those are interministerial programs for kids at significant risk. And it would not and does not envision consolidating programs such as Ideal Mini, as those are choice programs.
Thank you. Any additional questions for Sean? Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Next delegation is Lisa McAllister, Amy Flory, Brent Flory, Tara Lynn Day, parents from Olympic Village School.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present here tonight. My name is Tara Lynn Day, and I'm here with fellow Olympic Village parents Lisa McAllister, Amy Flory, and Brent Flory, and speaking on behalf of many other parents and families in Southeast Falls Creek. We're here to share with you the strong community support for a new elementary school in Olympic Village, as well as some of the challenges our community is facing with the current school situation. My family, like many others, moved to Olympic Village with the hope that our children would attend the new elementary school identified many years ago to be built adjacent to Hinge Park. The need for this school has increased over the years and has become an urgent and overwhelming concern. Our children in Olympic Village deserve to go to school together and to go to a school within their own community. This isn't happening today. Capacity and waitlist issues, as well as existing school geography, have created an extremely challenging situation for parents, students, staff, administrators, and trustees alike. We know that many of you share our vision for an elementary school in Olympic Village, so we are here to ask what we can do as parents and community members to move forward these long-standing plans and make it happen. We've prepared 7 slides to share with you tonight that highlight the current capacity challenges, community impact, and how Olympic Village parents and residents are rallying behind this project. The existing catchment school for Olympic Village is Simon Fraser Elementary, and we know that the school has significant capacity issues, as do many of the schools within the Canby corridor. For the upcoming school year, Simon Fraser received 105 in-catchment kindergarten registrations before February 1st. The school can only accommodate 40 kindergarten students, which is only 38% of total registrations. Of the 40 spots, 27 were given to siblings, leaving only 13 available as lottery spots. The remaining 65 students were placed on a wait list, as they are at many other schools across the district. My son is one of those students. He's number 63 on the wait list, and it's unlikely he will ever get into our catchment school. Many waitlisted families like ours are looking at other options, including cross-boundary applications, choice programs, and private schools. In our case, we were very fortunate to be offered a French immersion spot, but it's not something we would have considered had we been able to get into our catchment school. Families without these options have been offered spots at Nightingale or Wolf. Wolf, as you know, is undergoing the seismic upgrade over the next 2 years, and those kids will be traveling even further to South Hill at 43rd and Fraser, which is more than 5 kilometers from home. It's not a reasonable walk, bike, or even bus ride for young kids. Even if capacity existed at Simon Fraser to accommodate all 105 kindergarten students, the school is not ideal as a catchment for Olympic Village families, as it's nearly 2 kilometers away and requires kids to cross 3 major streets: West 2nd, Broadway, and West 12th. Olympic Village is a fantastic place to live, and many families have moved here for the walkable and sustainable lifestyle. The school situation is fragmenting our community. Children living on the same street and in the same buildings are going to different schools. Many of these children attend the same preschools and daycares and the same extracurricular activities, and they won't be able to attend kindergarten together. The situation has created uncertainty for families not knowing what school their children will attend. It is forcing some families to consider moving away from Olympic Village And for others, it is just discouraging them from moving there in the first place. Many families are having to drive their kids to school when they otherwise wouldn't use a car. We are one of those families. And for families without a car, it presents an even greater challenge. The picture on this slide shows 4 students who all live in Southeast False Creek and attend Creekside Preschool at the community center. They are able to walk to school every day. The boy at the front is my son, Hunter. He will be attending Trafalgar Elementary in the fall. Keika, to his right, will attend Simon Fraser as she has a sibling at the school. And Claire will be attending South Hill and then General Wolfe. All will need to be driven to school. Marcelo has 1 more year before kindergarten. He lives in the False Creek catchment, and his family is now experiencing the uncertainty of where he'll go because that school is also full. As a community, we wanted to do something about this. So we created a survey and a petition that was launched on May 1st. At the end of last week, we had more than 250 responses, and today that number has increased to more than 550. There was also a local rally at Hinge Park on Saturday where Olympic Village families built their own school out of cardboard. You may have seen the coverage on City TV. The survey gathered data on where the respondents live and where their kids go to school. What the data showed is that Olympic Village kids are attending at least 15 different elementary schools across the city. Some are attending schools outside of their catchment by choice, but many are not. Our community in Olympic Village is not yet built out. A number of residential buildings are still under construction. Families are still moving here and we want them to. But the school situation is a problem. The problem will get worse if we don't act now to build a new school. Our final slide and our request this evening is firstly to request an update on the plans for a new school in Olympic Village, including the status of the land acquisition adjacent to Hinge Park. Secondly, a request for consideration of interim solutions to address the significant capacity issues at Simon Fraser. Some of the suggestions put forward from the community were to consider a temporary modular school in Olympic Village and possibly a K-3 annex as a start. Thirdly, a request to identify a contact that can liaise with the parent community as we wait for the new school to be built to provide updates, and we would be looking to the Vancouver School Board to advise who the appropriate person would be. And finally, how we as parents and community members can support the process for a new school. We want to help. It's important to us. We live here in Olympic Village and we look forward to supporting the school board on this important project. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Any additions from the delegation? The other members, or
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you. The capital plan submission will be coming later in our agenda with regards to one of the questions had to do with acquisition, and the second is a build of Olympic Village. So that hopefully, because we have within 2 hours, we get there. But the capital plan has to be passed by the end of June. So in the proposal is the two, the acquisition and the construction. I'll open up for questions from committee members. Jennifer.
Thank you, through the chair. Thanks so much for your presentation. Definitely hearing a lot about the Canby corridor and the pressures that families are facing, but also from the West End and sort of this myth buster that children aren't living in Olympic Village. So I really appreciate the context. And the impetus for being a city that's welcoming of children sounds like also something that's important and that's coming forward. So I'm curious about currently, where are folks accessing childcare and Strong Start programs? Is it similar to the locations where children are going to schools or elsewhere?
So I know Mount Pleasant Elementary does host a Strong Start program, and I do know of some families in the village who attend Strong Start there. In terms of childcare, my daughter has had the opportunity to be both at BSOC West Village location, which is on West 2nd, and also at Creekside, that is run by DDA. So there are, and so just in those two facilities, we have a preschool class, a 3 to 5 room, and then at the other one, a junior kindergarten and a 3 to 5 room. Students at those locations, almost all of them live in the catchment because they give priority to residents. So there's very few people that are out of there. So right there we have, easily 2 kindergarten full classes.
Thank you. Lois and then Janet.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. And it should have been obvious, but it just occurred to me that you don't have a principal, so that's why you need a liaison for the community. So I'm wondering, how have you gathered this information? Because this is a really great presentation and you have a lot of information there. How have you gathered the information? Who are some of your contacts? I'm also wondering if you're aware of the history of how VSB has been working on the school at Olympic Village, and if you can give me some insight into how you work as a community, I would be interested in knowing. Thank you.
I'm happy to answer that. So the first part of your question was around the information gathering. So this process and this survey and petition, it was a very organic process. It was us parents, it's the topic for discussion, every preschool drop off, every park play date around the capacity and the school challenges in Olympic Village. And so it was a few of the parents, and I'll recognize Lisa here, who's really spearheaded this and just said, enough's enough. Let's start a petition, and went around knocking on doors and put the online link up and put up the posters in many of the buildings in Olympic Village, so the strata community boards, and that's where we've generated some of this information from. And we're happy to share those results by email too, if that's helpful from that survey. Your second question around the history, my experience is quite recent because I have a 4-year-old son and a 6-month-old daughter, and so I've just gone through the kindergarten registration process this year, but I have gone back and looked at some of the historical documents. I know this has been an issue for years, and I know others have spoken to it, and I know others have tried to address it, but we really just wanted to restart the conversation.
Thank you. Janet?
Thank you, and I think the more voices that are in the conversation are really going to help move this forward. As a board, we do a lot of work with our local MLAs. We recently invited all of them to come to meet with us as a board, and we also meet individual MLAs and address issues in their constituencies. So this has been a frequent conversation with our MLAs. And I'm sure you're aware that as a board, we have to respond to what's happening in our city. We have to evolve with where the development's happening. And it's not a surprise that there are families in Olympic Village. It's the frustration that there hasn't been the capital funding coming forward for the school when a site has already been identified. As Lois was talking about, you're not within the system, so you don't have a formal voice with us, but I am the trustee liaison for Simon Fraser, so I'm happy to be an initial point of contact for you, and I'm sure we can work on communication pieces with staff and sort of formalize this relationship, because there is such a large community of families who are not being served in Olympic Village. And we are striving to be a walkable city. We are striving to be a livable city, and the impacts it must have on the commutes for the family, on childcare choices, and just how you organise your life must be very significant and raise many difficult challenges. So thank you for reaching out to your preschool families to bring us this information, and I certainly hope that this will help to bring change in Vancouver.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for your presentation. With regards to your slides, can staff and myself get a hold of that, and then so we can address some of the questions. We haven't, ready? We have it. All right.
Yes.
Petition link is part of the slides as well. That's
Yes, it is, and
okay.
we've included it in the footer on each one.
Perfect. And as finally, later on, we're going to have the capital plan discussion. Thank you for your presentation. It fits ideally in. The actual decision will be coming with regards to discussion will be coming to the next facilities and planning meeting, which will be June 19th. You can come here, but it's also live stream, so that's with ease. I think we've added that Olympic Village in previous years. I don't think it's an issue. We've always added it in as year one, as with regards to the Olympic Village and the new build. With regards to your others, what can we do? Trustee Fraser is the appropriate point person, and then she feeds it back. She's also the chair of the board, so she'll feed that back to us quite well. So we will work together with regards to Olympic Village. Barb and Lois, last two comments. Barb.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering if Citygate is included in this sort of catchment idea of Olympic Village.
Citygate, I believe, is in the crosstown catchment, but there are certainly Citygate children that attend the preschools, so they would have filled out the survey, the ones that we reached out to, and we do see crosstown on our map of where some of these children are going.
Thank you. I personally really like the idea of modular schools because I live in Citygate. I live at Main and Terminal, and as you know, we have many modular homes in our neighborhood, which I think is fabulous, and it makes sense to me that we have modular schools too. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for your presentation. Just pointing to. Next up, I believe Albert Jong is not coming this evening, just in case he's in the audience. No. And the next up is Carl Chen. Carl. While we're waiting for Carl, is Kel Sillam available, or did he make it here this evening? No. All right. Thank you. Carl, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to talk about where we could look for meaningful, long-term solutions to our aging school problem. And the reason I'm here is because my daughter goes to kindergarten at Queen Alexandra, and we live in a school catchment, and our family has the same concern as our neighborhood parents, namely school closure several times, and school closure list several times, and aging building. And I work at McDonald Real Estate Services as a commercial real estate agent, and from my perspective, I really think we have solutions out there to solve one of the core problem we have here, which is insufficient funding. Let's face it. And I would like to stretch everyone's mind here a little bit to look at the first two words on our plan here is the long range. Okay, so I think the long range facility plan only look into 2032. I can't find any later years in the report. But the average school age is 73 years right now. And this is quoting the ORFP. So if we time travel back to 1946, did our predecessors foresee our current challenges? And if we can time travel to the future, what challenges will our future hold? Now, we all know future is uncertain, but future is rooted in the past. And based on the past, we can build projections and scenarios, and our regional planners have done just that very recently. And in that, they identified several challenges and impact and disruptions we'll have facing as a society. Climate change, AI and automation, and not to mention the least, is the problem of inequity and wealth gap, it will not disappear. And we all know that strong public education is the key stepping stone for social mobility. And if we keep chanting, children are our future, well, let's build it together by looking at some possible solutions that's right under our feet. So one of the things that we keep encountering is fix it or build it problem, and there's two wrinkles that I see here. One is the least cost option issue, restricted by the memorandum of understanding, and the other is the heritage retention requirement imposed by the City of Vancouver. And I looked through the long-range facility plan. Looks like, if we're going to fix schools, seismic upgrade, the cost is approximately 20 to 30 million. That's the ballpark figure. And if we look at the construction cost projections and the newly constructed Carson Elementary, the range is 20 to 40 million bucks, depending on the capacity needs. So on a very quick glance, it seems like, maybe it will make sense to, fix it all and forget about school replacement or new schools. And especially in the context of where if we want to replace schools, this gap in premium had to be paid by the VSB. Now, I'm not sure, surely I'm not trying to paint a very biased picture here, but I think we should really explore and consider the fact that if we try to fix our aging schools, the school is still more than 100 years old in some cases. So there's extra ongoing maintenance and operating costs that's going to associate with that. And consider that if we build and replace school with modern schools, we have modern teaching environment and obviously reduce greenhouse gas emissions, reduce maintenance costs, reduce operating costs. Is this actually the case? I'm actually not sure. I'm just putting it out here. And if that's the case, maybe if we can demonstrate to the Ministry of Education that if we have a third party to examine this in depth and show that, hey, look, the least cost option in the long run, the previous slide actually make more sense. And we can ask for additional funding. And the other wrinkle that I want to touch on is the heritage retention problem, which a lot of people don't think enough about. But the recent school survey we conducted has shown that most parents don't think about maintaining heritage school buildings versus improve the safety of this facility. Let's face it, we rather have safe schools rather than heritage school buildings that might fall apart upon earthquake. Facade is really just more than enough. So there are three ideas to explore with the City of Vancouver on this particular issue, because that the city through this heritage retention requirement, the city restrict what we can do with our school sites. And we should really ask the city to consider waiving relaxed retention requirements, and also to ask them to provide funding if retention is mandated. Look, if you want this heritage character to be around, maybe city also have to chip in. And if they don't, you know what? They can whip a stroke of a pen and create something called density bonus for incentivizing us to retain the heritage elements of the school buildings. And we can in turn maybe sell it to developers, generate fundings, or maybe even use that to develop higher density in our school sites. So coming back to that few slides ago, we talked about that premium gap and funding. Where do we look for money? Let's show me the money. Surely Tom Cruise is not going to come around to donate money to us. So let's look under our feet. The school board has a portfolio of 125 physical building assets, 600 acres of land, valued at 7.6 billion. I do not know any other owner in the city, other than the City of Vancouver itself, that owns more land. All right, and I really want to point out selling school land is definitely not a long-term solution, because you can't create more land. You just can't. Instead, we should explore a 99-year lease model or variations of that. And there are success stories like that with our universities in town. So here's a success story that was detailed in the Vancouver Sun very recently and showcasing how Mr. Robert Lee campaigned and created this model for UBC to prosper. Originally, UBC has thousands of acres of land sitting empty as parking lots at night. And they spearheaded this UBC Property Trust and created this particular way to generate funding, which is through a prepaid 99-year lease model. This way, UBC still retains ownership to its land and gets additional payment upon this 99-year lease is up through lease renewal. And this, in turn, really create a vibrant community in UBC. And not to mention the $1.6 billion that was generated for the endowment fund. And here I quote Michael White, the Associate Vice President of UBC here, saying that universities plan for 1,000 years. They don't plan for 50. So there's perpetual benefit through the generations. And I also want to touch upon, SFU also has a great model as well to create their Burnaby campus and downtown campus. And you should look into this great speech by the president in 2009. So by adopting various land lease models and partnering up with public and private groups and working with the city to create and update neighborhood community plans that's school-centric, we can really build vibrant communities that contain various housing options. And the key here is really to create proper incentives for different groups to make this happen. And which brings me to the other possible solutions here, in addition to what I just mentioned, is to upzone and increase density around schools. In the same survey we had conducted, the majority of people think that we should work with the City of Vancouver to create family-friendly density near our schools. We should really explore this concept of schoolhood and participate in the City of Vancouver's citywide plan, which is also part of the Resilience Vancouver strategy. And this way, more people will be living around schools and we won't have this decreasing enrollment issue ever. On top of that, with combining with the previous land lease model, we'll have funding for new schools. So it's going to stop this vicious cycle of schools dilapidating. Nobody wants to go there. It's on chopping block. Oh, nobody wants to go there again. And the enrollment number goes down. Enrollment number goes down. We don't want to fund the schools, and on it goes. We can stop that cycle right there and then. And the key here is that we need to have liaisons who can effectively work with the city to create this vision. So in summary, we should be the center of this, being a change maker here to work with every aspect of the society. So what will what challenges will our future holds? Well, I think the question should be really, how do we build and shape communities on and around schools so that we are prepared for the future?
Great. Thank you, Carl.
That's right.
Thank you. I'll open up for questions from the committee members. Jennifer.
Thanks so much, Carl, through the chair. Thanks for your presentation. I'm super passionate about this subject and wrote an article recently about the topic of 99-year leases. And I think we've also heard from parents from one of the elementary schools, Caval, around, they've run some numbers on the replacement versus seismic options or combination of both. So that would be of interest to you, perhaps. The other one I just wanted to mention was that one of the properties that I came across was Sheraton Wall Center as a previously owned VSB property as well. So thanks so much for your interest in the long-term success of the district. I guess as a question, you're a real estate, commercial real estate developer?
I'm a commercial real estate broker.
And you're not out for school land, so
no,
just confirming
no,
that. Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
It's not even in my mind.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for your researched presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, as stated earlier, we're moving the items for approval up. 4.1, 4.2. We need to have 4.2 discussed, as that needs to go to the Parks Board as well. So we'll start with 4.2, then we'll go to 4.1. So, and just as a reminder, as we go through the rest of the meeting, that if trustees, aside from questions, their statements should be held off until the board meeting itself. That is where trustees deliberate. Jim Machina and Jim DeHoop, presentation with regards to David Thompson Secondary potential land exchange option. Jim.
Thank you, through the chair. My name is Jim DeHoop, Manager of Planning. I'll be doing a short presentation to give you a status update of the results of a public consultation on a proposal for a land exchange involving Gordon Park. And there is a recommendation to support that option of a potential land exchange with the Vancouver Park Board as one of the options being explored under the seismic mitigation program. So the David Thompson Secondary, it's included in the seismic mitigation program. It's H1, rated high seismic risk, and a project definition report has been done considering some options in draft. The present report before you talks about the potential land exchange with the property at David Thompson bounded by Argyle Street, 55th Avenue, Commercial Street, and 49th Avenue. So this slide shows the current site where the existing school is located on the south of the property and the existing Gordon Park on the south side. The potential future site overview includes the new Gordon Park where the current school is, the existing Gordon Park in the middle, and a new David Thompson school. So on February 28th, 2019, we had a public information session at the secondary school and gymnasium. 58 people signed in at the public information session, and we had a very successful uptake on the online feedback form system. We had 609 completed feedback forms at a very high response rate from the neighbors and the school community. And the survey was open until April 15th. 86% of the survey respondents supported the option of the potential land exchange, and 49% found that the information session was very helpful. And again, some of the most frequent comments, certainly the top two comments were in terms of analyzing the written feedback, that a new school on the current Gordon Park site is the optimal choice, 60%, that a new school is the safest option, 45%, followed by some other comments about renovating, upgrading existing parts of the school, getting the school closer to the transit line at 49, and that a new school shouldn't be located too close to a busy street. So those are some of the top comments that were in your report. The other considerations that we made clear in our public consultation is that during the construction period, the middle portion of the field will continue to be used by the public for park purposes and by the school members. Also, any Gordon Park field users that would be displaced during the construction could be accommodated in other school sites, for example, John Oliver Secondary and Tupper Secondary, and that will be studied in more detail if the option to study the land exchange is considered or approved tonight. So the recommendation in your report is that the Vancouver Board of Education approve a land exchange with Vancouver Park Board at the Gordon Park Thompson Secondary School location, subject to a replacement school being the best value funded option and subject to the execution of a land exchange agreement between the board and the Vancouver Park. And again, some of the numbers have been studied, but there's not enough detail to look at what's the best value funded option. We want permission to take a look at it and study it further. Ms. Moschino, I don't know if you have any other questions on the timelines.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for the presentation. Very concise. open it up for questions, comments. Estrelita, Barb?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a question where Park Board is at with their process, if it's known.
Through the chair, we might have a representative from the Park Board here tonight. Is there one? No, I guess they couldn't make it, but they are proposing to bring this to their board on the 27th. So that's the same night that we would be bringing it to our board for decision.
You, Barb?
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank you for coming up with the expression best value funded option. I like that a whole lot better than low cost option. So I think that's a really good phrase. I think that we should probably start putting it into our language. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No more questions. Committee members, looking for committee members, moving this to the board with the support by the committee. All right, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Next item, which is the big item, the long-range facilities plan recommendations. And who do we start with? Secretary Treasurer?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Assistant Secretary Treasurer Lisa Landry and I have poured together for this. Essentially, we are looking at going through the recommendations that were they're all listed in your package, but also then to deal with the ones that had not previously been dealt with in some manner. This is not the right PowerPoint. Where's the PowerPoint? So as the committee members will know, the Facilities Planning Committee met on April 17th, and a number of revisions were proposed for the some of the recommendations in the long-range plan, and some new ones were put forward by trustees to be added to the plan. At that meeting, a working group was formed to review the information that was discussed that night, and the working group was assigned to task of draft revised recommendations for the next Facility Plan Committee meeting, which is now tonight. For those in attendance at the board meeting on April 29th, trustees did adopt 5 of the recommendations and remove 2 others. And on May the 8th, the working group met and reviewed information from the Facilities Planning Committee and the board meetings, and that working group has now incorporated changes in some of the remaining original recommendations. So tonight, we're going to look at, I just referred to these actions that have already taken place. We're going to start to look at, these are the motions that the board approved on April 29th rather. So number 4, and at that particular night, that number 4, there was an additional motion that was proposed by trustees and adopted by the board in relation to the continued work on the implementing the recommendations of the French program review. Number 7 was approved by the board. Number 8, number 10, and a new recommendation, number 18, was also passed that night. And the 2 recommendations that were removed that night were number 6, which was deemed to be not necessary because the board had previously passed a motion to that effect. And of course, number 12, which was to remove the recommendation that the school closure process would be undertaken. So, Mr. Chair, we're now going to go through each one of the rest of these recommendations and sort of talk to where they stand right now, and for the committee's consideration for moving them forward to the board for the board's consideration. And I'm going to ask Lisa to hang in here on some of these because I wasn't on the working group, but she was. So the first one is unchanged from the draft long-range facilities plan that was presented on February 25th. That the district develop an administrative procedure setting out Guiding principles, detailed procedures for governance, stakeholder consultation for SMP projects. So, Mr. Chair, that one is put forward for committee's consideration. I know DPAC was in favor of this motion earlier tonight.
Chairperson, hoping to get this time for stakeholders to provide input. I have summarized sort of those the stakeholders, DPAC, there's a survey, VSTA, and VESTA provided written submissions. So as we go through these, if those 4 areas, DPAC, survey, VSTA, VESTA, all stated agreement, I will just quickly look towards the voting member trustees and to see if they support as well, moving to the board, that particular motion. So the first up is that particular motion, and all DPAC survey, our survey, and VSTA and VESTA approved that recommendation. So approve, going to the board. Yes, all right. Second one. Oh, sorry. Moving too fast, actually. Any other stakeholder input with regards to that motion? All right, thank you.
The second one, Mr. Chair, was has been recommended by the working group to be referred to the 2020 Long Range Facility Plan. District established guidelines for preferred school size.
Although all 4 areas, and I won't say who they are again, DPAC, the survey, the STA, VESTA supported too, the working group suggested this move forward in the 2020 to be included in the 2020 LRFP. Given that all 4 groups supported that, rather than, I don't know how we do this, is it if we can approve that to go forward for the 2020 LRFP, or next year's LRFP, can we bring that to the board as part of a motion, Secretary Treasurer?
I would believe that you could do that. The board could do that if the committee recommends that.
All right. Okay. Barb.
Well, Chair, I wonder if you could explain the reasoning behind the work group's position on this one. I think that number 2 is probably one of the most important recommendations in the LRFP. And so I'm wondering why they recommend that it be delayed a year.
From what I remember with the conversation, and I'll ask Assistant Secretary Treasurer to add to that, is that some of the recommendations here would lead up to that to help better put us in a better position to then have that discussion for the following year. Anything in addition to that, Lisa?
Yes, through the chair. Yeah, that is an accurate recollection of what was said, that this was a fairly goodly sized amount of work, and that perhaps the LRFP would get a good time to do the work in advance, that the duration of the long
leading up to that. We also had a discussion with some of these motions if we were going to do it, like span it over 2 years, because we didn't want the intention to go out there that if it's in there, that there would be a conclusion within 1 year. So, we can have a possibility of having that start and then spread it over 2 years. But we thought we'd just put it in for the next year, but work would be done. Sean.
Through the chair. I would just like to understand, because previously we had brought to the board's attention that there had been work done in 2016 on preferred school size, and it was actually published as part of the school closure process in 2016. What happened to that data, and how is any of that being factored into the decision of the working group?
I remember that in that 2016 LRFP. It wasn't included in this one, so I'll just ask staff if they had any updates or whether Deputy Superintendent Nelson.
Yeah, so through the chair, there was a brief reference to school size in the 2016 document, but there was no process or work done in that. It was strictly a high-level statement. So there would be the intent, as I understand this, would be a much broader consultation process around preferred school size.
In more detail. Sean?
Through the chair, it wasn't through the LRFP that it was brought forward in 2016. It was part of the school closure process.
Oh, okay, following the
And
LRFP.
actual numbers were presented as part of the FAQ by the VSB around that. So
Okay.
just really would like to understand what happened to those numbers and anything that led up to the decision to publish them at that time.
It's not in this year's LRFP. I'm not sure what else I can say. Coming back to this particular motion, Janet?
I can speak to that. I think when those numbers were brought forward previously, that was looking at research that had been done and just taking that research and taking a broad range of numbers from that, and not speaking with our stakeholders and not looking at a Vancouver context. So I think what the Deputy Superintendent said is that if we want to move forward those numbers, we should work with our stakeholders to make sure they're appropriate for our schools in Vancouver. The sense of the working group was to try and manage the workflow of it. If the will of the board is to move this forward now, it will be incorporated into the work plan that will be developed moving forward from the recommendations that are approved in the next month.
Okay, spring a whole lot. I'll do Barb, Lois, Harjeet. Okay, Lois and Harjeet.
Thank you, Chair. Could you clarify what is meant by referring to the 2020 LRFP? In reading that initially, I thought that meant the whole recommendation would go to the 2020 LRFP and then it wouldn't get approved until 2020. But is the intention to do the work so that we have preferred school size to be used in the 2020 LRFP? So the work would be done ahead of the 2020 LRFP?
The thoughts was that this would be virtually a 2-year process. So that's why, if we put it in this year's RFP, thoughts was that it would be all completed within a year. We needed more time, and there was going to be lead up information discussion, as the Assistant Secretary Treasurer stated. But we can put it in this year's LRFP, seeing that all 4 groups supported that. So rather than continue the discussion, we can have that, but knowing that it might not be concluded within the first year. Harjit.
Yeah, thank you. I just have a clarifying question on if VSB goes ahead and establish guidelines on preferred school size, but we still have to work within the ministry area standards. Like how will that affect us if we say the school size should be, this is the preferred size for Vancouver, but that does not fit in within the ministry area standard guidelines. So I just want a clarification on that. Like, do we still have to work within the ministry guidelines when we are looking at the preferred school size?
Right. To the chair?
Yes.
Yeah, to the chair. The two items, Harjeet, are not really related. Like preferred school size is, from an educational perspective, and I would defer to my educational colleagues, but it's the number of students in the school that would offer, the best type of programming that school could offer. It doesn't really relate to area standards. I don't know if you want to ask one of these associate superintendents.
Harjeet, to follow up question.
Yeah, actually, just to follow up, because the example comes into my mind is Eric Hamber example. Like we, as a district, we had to work within that area standard, and then we decided that the new school will not have the gym and the auditorium of the size that we wanted. That's how we started the plan. Now we are asking the ministry to change that so we can have that extra space. So let's say, so my question was on that. I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear.
Okay. Oliver, yes.
I think what Harjeet is trying to say is, does school size refer to class size, to physical building size, to total enrollment in the school? You know, which one, what are we actually talking to there? Because I think that Harjeet is referring to, and I thought it was as well, to building size and building space.
Jim.
Through the chair, I think this one refers to number of children attending a school, whether secondary should be between a certain range and an elementary through a certain range. It doesn't have to do with the physical attributes of the school per se, or the area of the school. It's the number of kids which comprise an ideal school size.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking what Trustee Hanson just said. I thought we were talking about prefers like school building size.
Janet.
Maybe we could change the wording of the motion to be clearer that it's number of students. Or change the wording of the recommendation.
While we work on that, Barb, sorry, I skipped you, I went around.
That's fine. It could just say school population instead of size. But from what I heard, the reasons for the working group and what you said, it seems to me that what is going to happen on some of the other recommendations that fit right into this recommendation is actually doing the work of this recommendation. So we are, from my point of view, we are actually starting the work on establishing guidelines on preferred school size.
Okay, so let's do it this way. Since there's already agreement by the 4 groups that this discussion is going in that direction, that we add this on to this year's LRFP. Support? All right. And we'll get wording with regards to number school size with regards to the number of students. Clear. I'm not sure if we need to add in that, you know, this one also the realization that it might not be completed or realized within the first year. Okay. Number 3.
Number 3, Mr. Chair, is about the alternate programs, consolidating alternate programs in a central location, and the working group didn't see any need to change that recommendation.
Thank you. So this one was not unanimous. And so this one will need a discussion. The Deputy Superintendent stated, and I think if we can ask for clarification with regards to the alternate programs definition as stated earlier.
Yeah, so Chair, certainly Director of Instruction Adrian Keogh could provide even more context than me, but our alternate programs are programs that target and serve needs of a very at-risk student population. They are programs where referrals are not made by the district. We operate them interministerially with other government agencies. So the intent behind this exploration is to look at, with a number of these programs, often located in off-site locations around the city, would there be some improvements to service delivery to these particularly vulnerable youth by consolidating the programs, which would allow you to, in essence, have a hub where you would have more access to counseling services, support services for the students, as opposed to having the program spread out. So it's the intent behind this is not, as I wanted to clarify earlier, to consolidate mini school programs or choice programs. It is to specifically look at these programs that service a very vulnerable, high-risk youth population, and to see if there's a better way to provide the service delivery for them.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Open it up for discussion. Barb?
Well, Chair, I actually was kind of gobsmacked when Deputy Superintendent mentioned that earlier, because I think that through all of the discussions have been around alternate choice programs, not what has just been defined as alternate. What do we call our alternate choice programs?
So through the chair, they're called district choice programs. So that encompasses mini schools, French immersion, Montessori. All of those are defined by the district as choice programs. And I agree there are a number of, we actually have alternate, alternative, and choice programs, as well as district special ed programs. So there are 4 types of district programs. But this one in particular is looking at the most vulnerable youth population, secondary students in interministerial programs.
Thank you. I think that we need to clarify the wording on this then, to reflect that that's the programs that we're talking about.
Okay, we can add that in as parentheses after the alternate programs. So just looking at members, Harjit and Sean.
Yeah, through the chair. So just to be clear, the alternate programs is the total ed is alternate program and PACE program in VSP. Are they examples of alternate programs?
Clarification with regards to total ed and
like there's a program called PACE and
PACE,
STEM program.
PACE and the STEM. Total ed first.
I'll have Director of Ed Planning answer, or Director of Instruction.
Mr. Keel.
Thank you. So as David was saying, there are 4 types of programs. So traditionally, mini schools, for example, were called district specified alternate programs decades ago. In the last decade or so, we've always referred to those programs, mini schools, et cetera, as choice programs. So there are special ed programs and alt programs. Total ed is an alt program. There are 21 alt programs. 10 of them are co-administered in schools and others are off-site. Several of them are at the old Waverly Annex area and others throughout the city.
Thank you. Follow up, Harjit?
Yes, thank you for that clarification. So what if we are saying that we're going to consolidate all programs into a central location, so are we saying that all those like at-risk students or vulnerable students, they be placed in one location rather than in different locations currently?
The investigation is a number of locations or one location?
Through the chair. So last year we did conduct an ALTS program review. In that review, we did address this topic of co-administering programs and co-locating programs. Totally 2 different concepts. So our main goal is to co-administer the programs, not to put them all under one roof in the city.
Co-administrate. Okay. Thank you. Sean.
Thank you. Through the chair. Which ministries are actually interested in these programs and have input or are otherwise involved in them, please?
Specific ministries, Mr. Keel?
So primarily, through the chair, it is MCFD. They refer students with our team. So we co-refer students. We have a district referral process. We meet monthly with the other ministry and including our VPD. So we do look at students together as a team.
Thank you.
So if I can ask as a follow-up, please?
Yes.
Have they been involved in these discussions and do they agree that this is a good plan for the well-being of these children to be consolidated through this?
So through the chair, yes, they have been involved. They do support our wraparound service goal of having more specialized services on site at the same time and available throughout the city.
Thank you. Anne.
Thank you. Through the chair, I was just wondering during the investigation process whether the students themselves, their families and teachers have been brought into the discussion. Have they been consulted on it?
The initial discussions.
Yeah, so through the chair, there was a review done in which all of those groups were definitely consulted, but I would say that it is a recommendation for the consideration of the board. So to have gone out and presupposed the board's approval to do this. We haven't done that level of consultation. We would wait for direction out of this plan.
Thank you. There yet. Jennifer, Hazel, and then Warren.
Through the chair, thanks so much. Yeah, for this recommendation, I think there's a lot of complementarity between accessibility and alternative. So accessibility is an important aspect of what we're considering here. Second, that recalling working in alternative programs, that again, accessibility is the difference between kids accessing alternative programs sometimes and not. So really being careful about co-location, co-administration, what's being meant by that in terms of study. And if it is so great, why don't we consider mini and choice programs altogether?
We're not there. It's one step at a time. Hazel?
Through the chair, I would just like to ask what co-locate and co-administrate mean?
The difference between co-locate and co-administer. Mr. Keogh.
Thank you. So currently we have 21 programs. Some of them are operated under the Vancouver Alternate Secondary School. So there is one principal for those 11 programs. In addition, we have programs, for example, Vinery at Kitsilano. So it's housed in Kitsilano. The principal is from Kitsilano, and they're co-administered through our department through our district principal and vice principal. So they work on the referral process together, but they are on site in secondary schools.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Warren, just in time.
Through the chair, apologize for the phone. I forgot to turn it off. I think my colleague has already addressed my concern, and my concern was centrally located alternative programs, and that just raised all kinds of red flags for me. Talking about equity and equities, et cetera. So I believe that that's not the case now. If my colleague is correct, we're not looking at centrally locating alternative programs all into one central location. Is that correct?
We're looking at co-administrate, not co-locate. Yes.
Co-administrative. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and there's 21 alt programs within the VSB, correct?
Yes.
And right now we have how many administrators administrating those programs? What would we be looking at in terms of administrators administrating those programs? Are we looking at one administrator, two administrators? And
I guess, is there a reduction in administrators? Or is that, we're not having that?
Through the chair, again, I think we're moving ahead. Okay. There would need to be work done on that. The intent, again, if I can just go back of this, is to look at the needs of this vulnerable group of students and to determine through this process if there's a better way to ensure that we're providing access to programs and services to support them in terms of successful outcomes. That's the intent behind the recommendation.
Thank you.
So then I can assume that administrators.
We need to have that discussion if the board passes to have that further discussion. We're not even at that stage at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Brent, I'll give you the last word.
Again, through the chair, the current success rate would be probably quite a long answer. It varies greatly by students, but certainly the intent behind this recommendation is to ensure the success rate is better moving forward, because obviously these are students we want to ensure we're providing every opportunity to be successful.
Thank you. And I guess that's where the committee's currently?
Through the chair, absolutely not. So there are high numbers that graduate every year. The Vancouver Alternate Secondary School hosts their own graduation every year, as all other secondary schools. And in addition, many of the other students complete graduation and graduate at one of the 18 secondary schools. So the goal is not to have them in the one place. So many of the students come to Outlet and return to a standard secondary school.
Go and come back.
Yeah.
do we keep track of, Mr. Keogh was saying that they go to the alternate programs and some or the majority come back into the regular school system. So it's hard to, I don't know if we have the statistics after that. Yes. You're pointing to.
Well, it's actually the Ministry of Education that tracks graduation rates, and there's no separate graduation rate that's tracked by the ministry for alternate students.
All right, so I'll look to the committee members. Question? Yes, Jennifer. Jennifer first.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair. So just to be clear too, so alternative programs refers to non-enrolling space as we define it now. Is that correct?
Mr. Keogh?
Through the chair, I'm not sure the intent of the question. So these programs are in offsite locations, many of them throughout the city. Don't want to say storefronts in any incorrect context, but many of them are in rental or shared ministry spaces throughout the city. So they're not all in our secondary buildings. So for example, a program in a secondary school like Templeton, Britannia, they are enrolling students in programs in schools and are counted as enrolling spaces.
As enrollment.
Got it. So that wouldn't be an alternative program in that case.
Through the chair, yes, they are the ones that are in secondary schools. There are 10 of them in buildings throughout the city, in secondary school buildings. The others are offsite.
Thank you.
Oliver.
Yes, through the chair. I think this dovetails on Trustee Parrott's comment. I think we need to, before we can recommend this to the board, maybe just tweak this recommendation a bit, because it's not clear what programs we're exactly talking about. Like even in the second clause, it calls it a district alternative program, kind of comes close to the other wording, and it uses the word co-locate, even though we've repeatedly said it's co-administer. So I wonder if maybe there can be some tweaks. I'm not sure the process, but it's hard for me to recommend it in its current state based on the discussion we just had tonight.
Oh, Carmen.
Thank you through the chair. Just to add on to what Trustee Hansen was saying, I think we really do need clarity here, and I would really recommend, in addition to clarifying the language, that we just list the programs that we're talking about and where they're currently located.
Thank you. So suggestion is, rather than do all that tonight, as we're running out of time for this, that we can come up with the two suggestions with regards to listing the alternate programs and ensure that it's co-administer is more of the focus, and bring that to the board for the trustees to discuss. Okay.
Yeah, so sorry, Chair, I absolutely agree this needs to be rewritten, so we will take that away. But I do want to be clear that we are looking in some cases at opportunities to co-locate as well as co-administer, so we will incorporate that
in there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that will come in wording, a different wording to the board with the discussion included in that wording. Next one.
Next one, Mr. Chair, is number 5. And basically it talks about undertaking enrollment data validation process. And the only change the working group came up was to remove the word annual validation study. So it now reads, this process which consists of a validation study of short, medium, and long-range enrollment objections, as well as updating student yield metrics for areas of the district with significant development and redevelopment proposed or underway.
Thank you. This was supported by all 4 groups. So it was a suggestion that we move this to the board. Yes. All right. Next one.
Next one, Mr. Chair, is number 9. And again, there's some wording changes to this one. So the working group we recommended that the Board of Education approve an annual budget allocation for the next 3 years to engage consultants with the intent to generate capital fund revenue, support enhancing capital projects, and implement a capital asset management plan.
Thank you. So this one was not supported by DPAC. The other two were survey and VST invested, and not have a specific direction with this regards to this one. sure if I'm reading that one correctly, but I think I am. Stakeholder groups, any questions or comments with regards to this one? If not, looking towards committee members that we move this to the board. Barb?
Sorry, Chair, just a question. Do we have a ballpark figure of the cost to this proposal?
Through the chair to, we don't have that at this moment.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, looking towards the committee members. Moving that to the board. Next one.
Next one, Mr. Chair, relates to number 11. And it's proposed that this be deleted from the long-range facilities plan because it was deemed by the working group to be operational work already undertaken by staff.
Okay, so the work is proceeding. This one, all 4 groups support it. So moving on.
Number 13, again, this was a recommendation that was not changed, but referred to the 2020 long-range facility plan by the working group that the district should conduct a detailed analysis on the impact of reducing school capacity through the seismic mitigation program, right sizing in relation to the goals and priorities of the long-range facilities plan.
This one wasn't one that was the working group didn't say they were opposed or anything there. It was just a matter of the time frame with regards to this, just like the earlier discussion. Any comments with regards to this one? Sean?
Thank you. Through the chair. We think this is a very important recommendation that needs to go forward as soon as possible. The further we kick anything to do with SMP down the road, the less impact it's actually going to have and the less benefit the district's going to receive from it.
If I can get the others that were on the working group further expansion, I'm not sure. We have to keep focus of how much work we put on staff with regards to that. We had a brief discussion around this as well. We were looking at this one as a 2-year discussion, more of the focus on the second year of the LRFP. But Assistant Secretary Treasurer, if you have any specific comments with regards to number 13.
Yeah, I think it was, as you said, just looking in terms of it being a bit of a more lengthy process. And so what long-range facilities plan document would that be that hit?
Thank you. Thought I saw a hand up on this side. Sean.
Sorry, thank you for, through the chair. Just for clarification, you've said a couple times a 2-year process. Are we looking at 2020 or 2021 for these then?
For passing for this year's LRFP and there's next year's. This is looking at next year's LRFP. So in the spring of next year.
So 2 cycles, not 2 years.
Cycles, okay. Yes, thank you. Barb.
Well, Chairperson, I also think that this one is really important. I've decided that I don't know where I'm coming from, but I think that this is really important because I see this is one way, and you know, I might be way out of line here. I may not understand it at all, which wouldn't surprise me. That this is one way that we could possibly increase the sizes, increase things in other schools that we need. So for example, if we say, let's rebuild Templeton, this is just coming off me, let's rebuild Templeton to accommodate the number of students that it has now, which is a lot smaller than what it was originally built for. So the ministry would be building a smaller school, which I would think would cost less money than building it at the same size it is now. And then perhaps we could negotiate with the ministry to use some of that money to add spaces that we want that they won't fund in other schools. That's why I see 13 as being something that we should start with right away, because it becomes, for me, it makes it more flexible for us to do other things.
Janet.
I'd be comfortable for this coming forward as a recommendation to be acted on now. And I think the understanding is, you know, we're going to have multiple recommendations coming forward, and an ask of staff will be what is the work plan to to do all this work in a coordinated manner.
Which could also mean it could be over a 2-year cycle. All right, okay. So, yeah, Hazel.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just wondering what kind of detailed analysis, what a detailed analysis means on determining what the right size is for a certain school and what specific, information the district would gather to determine that.
This is the analysis with regards to reducing school capacity through seismic mitigation project. That's what we're trying to gather is that analysis.
Sorry, I don't completely understand the. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is because I've heard from especially Hamber students that the right size wasn't really determined for their school because the programs and the theater productions and stuff like that were just not considered in the original drafting of the building. So that's what, to them, from what I've heard, is right sizing.
This is detailed. It's an analysis on the impact of reducing school capacity. So reducing the number. So rather than, let's say, closure of number of schools, when you do the seismic mitigation program, then you reduce the size of the school rather than closing that many more schools. Janet.
I think this might also be an example where right sizing could do with a little wording revision. I think right sizing is in relation to the number of students and not the physical size of the school. Because the school capacity is the number of students.
So for example, if a school can fit currently 200 students, and there's only 100 students there. So when we seismically mitigate the school, and we build the school that's 100 students rather than the 200 students. That's currently the size of the building. So we shrink the school. So this one, Sean.
Thank you. Through the chair, not just to belabor the point here, but to Trustee Parrott's point here, I think that that's the right direction here, is to say if we've got a school that currently has, say, 1,200 students built for 17, build a smaller school. And from the SMP perspective, you're going to then looking at the best value option as possibly being the rebuild rather than just a mitigation at the current size that school is built to. So I think in that respect, you're trying to weigh the costs also of reducing capacity and getting more newly built schools in the district comparing to the other options that might be on the table.
Okay, the last comment goes to the Deputy Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a long night already.
Yes.
So I do just want to clarify that this I believe has been accurately captured is about looking at the reality of as you proceed through the seismic program and you build schools of smaller capacity, what that does in terms of the long-term goal and all the properties, like all the school sites in the district. So that was the intent of the analysis. Also for clarity, when we submit a seismic mitigation program, we already have to submit a plan that looks at the enrollment of the school. So if a school is built for 1,700 and the enrollment is only 1,200 and the projection is only 1,200, the ministry is already going to right size that school to 1,200. That's an expectation. So this is different than that. It's about looking at what does it do to the whole seismic program and the board's bigger vision of getting all of our schools upgraded and all of our students into safe seats.
Thank you. All right. Seems like there's interest with regards to this one, knowing that it might be spread over 2 years, that if there's support by the board, the committee, that it goes to the board. All right, this one will move over. So this one and the other one, we should put asterisks next to that, knowing that it'll probably be a 2-year process. Next one, Secretary Treasurer.
Mr. Chair, the next one relates to this Guy Carleton Elementary one. And the working group has proposed that the recommendation would read that the district decide in conjunction with the advancement and development of the Carleton SMP. I would suggest you mean the Seismic PDR. Seismic PDR. If a seismic upgrade is Sir Guy Carleton Elementary, should be used as temporary accommodation for the SMP or as an enrolling school.
Thank you. There's been support by 3 other groups. VSTA did not comment because it's elementary school. So suggest we move this forward. Yes. Next one, number 15. Jill.
Just a question around where Carleton is in that process. If we could get an answer on that. It's been a while since we've heard, and just wondering, you know, what if there's like a timeline on that, or?
Through the chair to Jill, there was a meeting of the steering committee of the VPO today, and the your funding approval summary sheet was submitted for review by the committee, and it'll probably come back to the next meeting of the committee in June for a decision to move forward on the PDR.
Thank you.
Arjun.
Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to comment on that. I think you know, I think Carleton's been closed for I think over 2 years now, and at some point at this committee we had discussion that right now it says used as accommodation for SMP or enrolling school, but I think we did I think had some conversation that can be used for both purposes, as an enrolling school and used as accommodation for SMP. The reason I'm saying that because since the Carleton has been closed, that school community has been kind of spread into a few other, like 3 or 4 schools right now. So if we are going to use this enrolling school again, there will be, you know, maybe not all 300 or 400 students, but there will be some students want to come back to at Carleton. But the size of the Carleton as it was, I believe it can be used for like both purposes for the time being until we grow the school again, and then we might be only using it enrolling school, or if we don't get enough students, cannot be used at enrolling school.
Thank you. And a lot of those comments are important ones if this passes and we proceed with that discussion. Seeing that all 3 groups supported that, that goes ahead. Okay, number 15.
Mr. Chair, number 15 has, in the working group, has sort of combined it with number 16. 16. Yeah, so, and basically it talks about that the district should undertake, completely change the 2 recommendations that were in the draft long-range facility plan, and suggest that the district undertake conversations with school communities to envision and identify opportunities for enhanced and renewed teaching and learning environments as part of any plan to consolidate school community.
Thank you. Comments? This one is not unanimously supported. Barb, first comment.
Well, Chair, I really like the first part because it's almost in my motion that I'm suggesting later on. I think that what I envision is an envisioning process that talks about teaching and learning environments as part of the discussion. I don't like the idea of focusing that envisioning as part of a plan to consolidate schools. I think that if that's the plan, if that's what we're doing this envisioning for in order to consolidate schools, you'll get a whole different envisioning than if you just ask the community what their vision of an excellent school would be in their community. I think if we throw those words in as part of any plan to consolidate school communities, it changes the whole intent.
Jennifer.
Through the chair, thanks so much. So yeah, just reading this through, I think one recommendation I would make is changing the word conversation to consultation in explicit reference to the new guidelines that talk about consultations, to be more explicit. As well, I feel like a piece that could strengthen this recommendation is around the equity and reconciliation piece. I know we're going to speak about that momentarily as well, but that could strengthen the sort of middle portion of the recommendation in like, so consultation with school communities to envision and identify opportunities for enhanced and renewed teaching and learning environments with a lens to equity and reconciliation, period. Something like this.
Thank you. I'm not going to make that change here at this point with regards to conversation and consultation. I'll just leave it to the committee members, and that could be changed at the board as well. So with regards to number 15, move that to the board. Yes, okay, a majority moves that to the board, number 15. All right, so those are the ones that were in the package. Then from the meeting, there were a number of motions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that came from the trustees and secretary treasurer. First one. Oh. All right, suggestions. Time got caught up with us. With regards to these additional motions, time frame. All right. Okay, so we're having a discussion with regards to these motions. And we need the LRFP and whatever parts we can get adopted. So that would facilitate our discussion with the 5-year capital plan. Suggestion is to have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 motions that are before us move to the board for discussion. If there's any particular specific inputs by the stakeholder groups, that I suggest that input be provided to us with regards to these motions. But with regards to the voting members on the committee, that the suggestion is that we move all these to the board. Trustee Reddy.
Thanks, through the chair. So just a question for clarification. Can we just see what those 8 are that you're referring to? Because I know that 2 weren't in the board package. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, through the chair, the first one talks about the letter or clarification of ministry on implications of the new guidelines, which is similar to the adopted number 18. This one talks about engage the Ministry of Education renegotiation of the MOU. This one talks about having a trustee serve as a non-voting member of the VPO steering committee. This one talks about maximizing opportunities for childcare space. This one talks about collaboration with the city, university endowment lands, local First Nations and development community plans. This one talks about board direct staff develop a way to assess capacity utilization of facilities with the intent to inform the 2020 plan, which again is somewhat similar to number 18. This one relates to request for a report outlining financial cost of operating district with excess capacity. And this one is from Trustee Parrott about her action plan for a working group and then an envisioning process.
That's actually 2 motions.
Yeah, I realize that, and I actually have separated them here on my sheet as 2 motions. Sorry. So, and I would like to, I mean, some of these, in my opinion, may not be long-range facility plan recommendations, but they certainly should be discussed at the board table for the board's consideration.
Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, through the chair, I don't see my motion there, so just wanting to make sure it's not missed.
Trustee Reddy's motion is in the agenda along with Trustee Wong's motion about, there is notices of motion that were referred to Facilities Planning Committee. There are items 3.1 and 3.2 in the agenda.
Yes, sorry, not that one, the long-range facilities plan motion that came to the last board meeting, I believe, where we discussed it. So all trustee motions came forward. Mine was one among these ones, but I just don't see it here. I could resubmit it.
Okay. So we're missing that. Do we have that? Are we missing? Do you have it on you right now?
I have it on me.
What is the motion?
Do you want me to read it out?
No, well,
Sorry, Chair. I do believe if it's the motion that was tabled by Trustee Reddy at the meeting with the other motions, it would have been integrated into the motions that came forward, because the working group looked at the various components of each of those motions and then reformatted them. So the ones that came forward were an amalgamation of a variety of trustee motions.
We can discuss this further. There are two of my motions that were amalgamated as well.
Yeah.
We'll discuss this. We can discuss this further.
Yeah, so I'll just resubmit that as a notice of motion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. We did a lot, and I appreciate the committee members for participating in the long-range facilities plan discussion. We're cut short for time because of the board meeting and committee of the whole meeting. So, yes. The remaining agenda items, and if I can do a quick ask before it does, these are going to the next committee meeting. Is that okay? Or anything that has to be moved tonight or recommended to the board? No, everything. Okay. So the rest will be going to the June 19th meeting. Trustee Cho?
Thank you through the chair. Just for clarification, so A through H are going to facilities or are going to the board?
They're going to the board on, the next board meeting, and the H is actually divided into H and I too now. And as well, Trustee Reddy's motion that we'll have a discussion that it was amalgamated to others, but if she doesn't see that it's reflected properly in the others, that we can have that be brought to the board as well. All right. I appreciate everyone. Thank you very much. I know we rushed through a lot of things, but I appreciate it. A lot is being done. Thank you, everyone, and see you on June 19th.
Thank you, Chair.